This video is brought to you by our merch store, where you can pick up TLDR pins for every EU country, including France. It's linked down below. 2021 is meant to be Germany's super election year, with a number of super important races. However, Germany's elections aren't the only ones being looked at with a close eye. So are France's. Although France's presidential election is set to take place next year, people are already discussing the potential of a populist Le Pen presidency a year out, with the recent regional elections acting as an indicator for the general election. So in this video, we'll take a look at why these regional elections are important, the results, and what it shows us about the upcoming presidential race. Let's start with the regional elections then. On Sunday, French citizens in certain areas headed to the polls for the first of two rounds of regional voting. If no party list achieves an outright majority in these races, the candidates who garnered more than 10% of the vote will progress to a second round of votes. In the second round, the largest party by vote share receives what's known as a majority bonus of 25% of available seats. So if you got 33% of the votes but were the largest party, you'd end up with a majority in the regional legislature. Obviously, these elections are important in themselves, but most people were watching them to see how well Marine Le Pen's National Rally and Macron's La République En Marche would do, because Le Pen and Macron are the frontrunners for France's next presidency. There were three reasons that people thought Le Pen might do well in this race. Firstly, the detoxification of the National Rally. In recent years especially, Marine Le Pen has abandoned some of her party's more divisive policies, and while Le Pen continues to be staunchly anti-immigration, anti-Europe sentiment has declined. Most notably, Le Pen and RN no longer advocate for Frexit, a French departure from the euro. The mainstream has also moved towards Le Pen, with the likes of Macron adopting tougher stances on sensitive topics such as Islam, leaving considerable overlap between what had been the mainstream and the new far right. The second reason many thought Le Pen would do well is down to tactical voting. In previous years, other mainstream parties would form alliances and encourage tactical voting to deny the National Rally a majority in the second round, even if they got the most votes in the first round. This alliance is known as Front Républicain. In the last regional elections in 2015, Le Pen won a plurality of the first round votes with 28%, but was denied any regional councils. This Front Républicain is this year at risk of failing to materialise in the same way. Established parties are arguably not in the mood to form alliances, especially given the fact that there's a lack of consensus on the right as to who should be their candidate for presidency following the emergence of Macron. The third reason is that Macron is struggling. For the last 2 years, Macron's approval ratings have struggled to break negative 20%. And while it's not a reliable measure, it's never good for a politician when voters are slapping you on the campaign trail. Anyway, Le Pen stood a serious chance of winning two key regions. In the south, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, and in the north, Hauts-de-France. Winning a region outright would have been a substantial win for Le Pen, and could spark some serious momentum in the pre-presidential campaign. Interestingly though, a National Rally victory in Hauts-de-France could actually benefit Macron. Xavier Berderant, president of the Hauts-de-France region, pledged to quit politics if he were to lose, stating that if I lose, it will be the end of my political career, arguing that he could not, in good faith, try to seek the support of all of France when his region does not back him. The former Minister of Labour, Employment and Health under President Nicolas Sarkozy was one of the only credible right-wing candidates in the presidential race, which means that his political death could actually help Macron in the presidential election. Enough posturing though. What were the actual results? Well, turnout was very low at 33%, about 20% less than usual. Of those who did vote, only about 11% voted for Macron's LREM nationwide. In Macron's defence, this is the first time his party have actually competed in local elections, which means that they have no local government experience, and local elections are usually pretty bad for incumbent parties anyway. Nonetheless, this was a pretty poor result for Macron. And while you might presume that a bad day for Macron must be a really good day for Le Pen, it was actually a pretty bad day for Le Pen too. While the National Rally did get more votes than LREM at 19%, this was still less than they would have hoped for. They did, however, win a plurality in Provence, so stand a good chance of winning the regional council in the second round. The only people who had a good night were the centre-right Les Républicains. The three coalitions that they were involved with won a total of 30% of the nationwide vote. Basically, it was a bad night for Macron and Le Pen, and doesn't actually tell us that much about their presidential prospects. Perhaps the biggest headline should be the turnout though. Sure, turnout wasn't helped by the confluence of good weather, lockdown easings and holidays, but such a low turnout is plausibly a symptom of wider apathy among voters. This is obviously bad for Macron, as he's presided over this apathy, and it's also bad for Le Pen, because more extreme parties usually do better when turnout is lower, which National Rally apparently failed to do this time round. But it's also just bad for French politics, and annoyingly for any political commentators, makes it hard to infer just about anything when it comes to the upcoming presidential elections. But what do you think? Are these results the sign of things to come? Has the far right become more palatable? And crucially, is France on course to see Le Pen become president? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.